what is force-free animal training? Sometimes people don't completely understand positive reinforcement training. And force-free training is training your dog without force, as it kind of sounds like. But what that means is we are teaching them to do things by reinforcing the good things, and we typically try to ignore the bad things. So instead of, for a simple example, for sit, instead of pushing their rear end to the ground, we encourage them to go into a sit and then reinforce that behavior. We now know that dogs learn a lot the same way humans do. Our brains are so similar. So just like you are more likely to do something for someone else or do a behavior over and over if the consequence is a positive one that you like, dogs and animals respond the same way. Where you're less likely to do something for someone else if every time that interaction is negative, you may not want to do that behavior or you may not want to be around that person. So positive reinforcement and force-free training is more than just teaching in these positive ways, but it also helps build a stronger bond. And so your animal is more willing to do new things with you, and it helps build their confidence. Sometimes I'm asked, well, what about in an emergency? You know, if my dog runs out in the street or is going to get hurt, I might grab them and it might be a little bit more forceful. And that's, when we're in those situations, that's a reaction. That's what has to happen. I live in Ventura. We had the biggest fire in California this winter. Dogs were forced in kennels. Horses were forced to get in trailers. There was a lot of force going on because we were in an emergency. It was a fast-moving fire. But what we learned, and what I'm trying to educate, is that yes, in that moment, sometimes our dogs and our animals had to do things that were forced and maybe weren't comfortable. But now we can take that chance and we can teach those horses how to get into a trailer without being scared. We can teach those dogs how to get into a crate when there's no stress involved. We can practice in a calm manner rather than having to be in that emergency situation. Sometimes the way we find out an animal needs to learn things is in an emergency situation. But that doesn't mean that we should just ignore it and wait for the next emergency. Just like everything, preparation and prevention is the best. So if you can prepare your animal just like we should be prepared for emergencies, you can prepare them for what might happen. When that emergency happens, it's not as stressful for them. So force-free training is teaching them in a force-free manner and trying to make it fun and enjoyable. I have a lot of dogs who don't like to go to the vet. If they have an emergency, we don't say, oh, well, they're not going to go to the vet today because they're too scared. We get them to the vet. But then after the emergency or the crisis is over, then we are practicing going to the vet on a positive note, just going in and getting cookies, not having procedures done. That's also just with training in general. You know, a lot of times our problems come because we are forcing them. They may seem stubborn, but a lot of times those dogs are afraid. So by using positive reinforcement and force-free training, we can build up our animals rather than keep cutting them down. So I have used these techniques and keep evolving as we learn more for 20 years. And it is definitely a much better way. It's a better training techniques. And it's also you build a better relationship with your animal. So check out Truly Force-Free Animal Training. There's going to be constantly information being added. If you have questions, feel free to contact us. But I hope that you enjoy learning more about force-free animal training.